All right, everyone. So today we're actually going to be talking about oozes here on the Blue Collar DM for Monster Monday, and also Monsters Explained. So before we get into it, though, one of the big things that we are going to talk about is going to be the Gelatinous Cube. So that's going to be at the end. I'll put a timestamp below if you just want to skip to the stat block breakdown of the Gelatinous Cube. But I am going to go over a little bit of the environment, some of the history of these different oozes that are their own subset of the monsters in the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition monster manual. In addition to some of the history that they have in some of the older editions. They're a very unique monster in the fact that they're not like your typical sentient type beings. They kind of just like maneuver around. They're very weird. They typically live in dark, damp, underground, different areas. Perfect for, dungeons and sewers and all kinds of different cave systems and stuff like that. They really thrive in this environment of the kind of like dark, damp, warm at times, depending on how you want to play it in your games, environments. They, generally speaking, stick to kind of walls and ceilings and kind of like just exist in the surrounding landscape. So for your players and your adventurers that are kind of jumping in there and basically jumping into an adventure where that you run into one of these oozes, and I apologize, my little guys. By the way, if you didn't know, my wife and I celebrated the birth of our first child, so he's actually down here. Little Blue is actually down here. Helping me with this video, actually. He's a little hungry, but so we'll hold on one second. All right, so hopefully that'll keep him occupied for now. If you guys like what you're seeing here, make sure you drop a follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this on. I'd really appreciate it. Also, make sure you like. Also, what are some monsters that are your favorites that you like in the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game? Make sure you put them down there in the comment section, and we'll break them down in a future video. But like I said, these oozes are very, they're almost environmental hazards more than monsters, but they are monsters in themselves because they do actually move. They have that really low intelligence score, so they pretty much just kind of go towards any movement or warmth that they sense in the surrounding environment, which makes them kind of like these mindless kind of creatures that kind of go around. They basically, the way that they kill things is by slowly killing them and engulfing them. They have very acidic properties to them, and hence why they kind of just slowly like engulf and dissolve whatever they attack. Makes for a very long, slow death. But also as a result, what can often happen is after you kill an ooze, you can actually find treasures and other things that aren't dissolvable or digestible by the ooze inside of its body. So it's a very interesting kind of monster kind of throw at your players, because not only is it kind of scary, but it also can be very, rewarding for them to defeat, not only from an experience standpoint, but also from a gold standpoint. It's one of the very few monsters that it makes sense for them to drop down, to drop gold as part of their loot pile, if that makes sense. Now, how are they used? Well, as far as for the Dungeon Master, there's a lot of different ways that you can use them, and I like to kind of frame it in what is going on in your storylines, in your campaigns. Now, if your players are entering a dungeon, maybe there's a wizard that kind of created the dungeon and they're kind of trying to protect any kind of treasures and stuff they have in there. Maybe they incorporate one of these oozes as part of a trap. Maybe they make a giant pit and there's an ooze down at the bottom and it falls in and then it just can't escape and it just slowly gets digested over time. Depending on, obviously, the power of the creature involved, but either way, it's probably going to die down there anyway if it's going to fall into that pit. Also, you can use them as creatures that also could benefit from them. So for example, if there's like a military group that like wants to use it as a refuse kind of dissolving, eating kind of entity, you can use it that way. Typically creatures are deceive them by kind of utilizing their kind of like mindless kind of go towards warmth, go towards movement, mode of propulsion and survival, that they can dupe them into kind of going in different areas that they want. So there's a lot of different ways you can play around with these things. Really big thing though is that they're pretty predictable and they're direct. So when you're playing them against your players, they're not going to be very deceptive creatures. They kind of just go in one straight line towards the closest thing that they want to eat, and they go find it and they eat it until it dies. So that's kind of how it goes. There are a bunch of different kinds of oozes. There's the black pudding is the one that's got the highest challenge rating. Sorry if I just blew you up on my microphone, but the black pudding has the largest challenge rating. We also have the gray ooze and the ochre jelly, but the one that's kind of famous, the one that everybody loves to talk about when we talk about oozes, is the Gelatinous Cube. And as a result, we will actually go over to my screen capture here so we can actually talk about that Gelatinous Cube. So there's a lot of really cool things in here. We're going to break it down step by step. Not a very hardy creature, but can be very dangerous in the right circumstances in your low-level parties. So Very easy to hit, armor class level 6, 84 hit points. We have a 15 speed, so it moves very slowly. It's immune to blind, charm, deafen, exhaustion, frighten, prone. It's got blind sight, it's got passive perception, challenge rating 2, and then you can see it's stat right here. Really beefy constitution, makes sense, and then a little bit of a strength score, but that's not really what they're there for. They're really there just to kind of move slowly and engulf things. Very classic monster here in a lot of the old D&D lore and all the other games, just because it's kind of like this big kind of like stuck point in the road. They take up its entire space. So a 5x5 cube, or excuse me, this is a large ooze, so a 10x10 cube. So if you're in a 10x10 hallway with a ceiling that's 10 feet high, it's gonna block the hallway if your players can see it. Because so there's actually a really interesting thing that it's actually transparent, which we can actually see here by this transparent ability, where if they don't see your players, that is, don't see the outline of the ooze, they will just walk right into the gelatinous cube without even realizing it and be stuck there. Your players can try to help get them out by making a strength check, but they will take some acid damage as a result. So this can be a very, very dangerous, like, quick party rape if you're not careful, so keep that in mind. It's got a pseudopod, so it can actually kind of almost have a projection out of the cube to kind of snatch at somebody to do acid damage. But the big thing it does is it engulfs its prey, which is kind of what we've been talking about for a very long time here. So they move up to up to its speed, and while doing so, they can enter a larger, smaller creature's space, and they have to make a dex save. If they fail, they're engulfed by the creature, taking 3d6 acid damage, and then will also take 6d6 acid damage, be restrained, and will not be able to breathe on subsequent turns for the cube. They can escape with another DC 12 strength check. On a success, they can escape to a space within 5 feet of the cube. Same thing, if they succeed, they can actually move. Tricky part is, though, is if they get cornered and they can't go anywhere, it'll be like they failed the saving throw anyway. So just keep that in mind as you're kind of going through this. Ways that you can use this as the Dungeon Master, again, traps. So one thing you can do is, say if your players trigger a trap, and we'll actually come back to my camera here. So with the gelatinous cube here, if you trigger a trap, for example, where the players maybe are walking down a hallway, they maybe a portcullis drops down behind them, and then a gelatinous cube drops in front of them, and it just slowly inches its way towards them. And you can kind of come up with some really interesting ways for your players to kind of get around that. The other thing they can do is the same pit trap kind of analogy, but this time the great ooze plop, falls down, and then oozes its way towards that pit trap, falls down on top of your players, and kind of keeps them there. Those are some very interesting kind of mean things you can do as a Dungeon Master if you want to play it that way. But there are other ways you can get around it. You can just use it as a standalone creature that is just blocking a hallway that the characters may or may not see, or they may or may not want to deal with. But be creative. Try it out. Talk with your players. See what you like. Or try it out with your players. See what you like. There's plenty of ways you can get creative with this monster. So that is going to wrap up our discussion here about oozes. I hope that was helpful for some of you first-time Dungeon Masters that are kind of not necessarily lost, but just kind of want a good general idea of some different monsters that are around. Also, make sure you like, follow, subscribe, all the things. Hit all the buttons, as I like to say. We also have a newsletter, so if you guys actually want to take part in that newsletter, there's going to be a link down in the description. Basically, I give updates on the channel. There's going to be some alterations to the recent newsletters because this guy has kind of put everything on a little bit of a weird hiatus sort of style right now. But in addition, we also have those live stream games. Make sure you check them out. Last thing, we are doing a giveaway, which I didn't mention, but I will put in Be Magic with the YouTube stuff here. We are doing a giveaway. Eldritch Press has been nice enough to give us the ability to kind of give some of their stuff away. That's Eldritch Press on the DM's Guild. Today, we're actually going to be giving away Eldritch Treasures Volume 1. So if you want to take part in the giveaway, make sure you leave a comment down below, and make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Happy gaming.